Tuesday certainly was a big and notable day in NFL free agency. And with all the talk about Tom Brady and his 2 decades with the New England Patriots coming to an end, and ultimately by the end of the day, it sounds like agreeing to a deal to become the new starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's easy to get caught up in all that news, but you had other news involving the quarterback position. You had Teddy Bridgewater coming to terms with Carolina Panthers. You had the news that Cam Newton requested a trade from the Panthers. Whether or not he did remains to be seen, but that's notable news. There's another big quarterback move that kind of is getting lost in the shuffle. Not even just Drew Brees resigning for 2 more years with the New Orleans Saints. I'm talking about the Indianapolis Colts that found themselves a new starting quarterback for 2020, and his name is Philip Rivers. Yeah, it doesn't even feel right. Guy spent 16 years of his career with the Chargers, first in San Diego and then Los Angeles. The last 14 of them as the primary starter for the team. And now in 2020, we're going to be looking at him in the same uniform that Peyton Manning once wore. And it just is weird to say. It's weird to think about. And I can certainly believe that once we actually see it, it's going to look really, really weird. If nothing else, 2020 so far, at a time where we really need the distractions and with the whole sports world pretty much at a screeching halt, we could use anything sports related. Thank the Lord for NFL free agency because it's filling the void. It's giving us something to talk about. And I at least certainly am thankful for it. Oh, man. Guess the Colts wanted to go in a different direction. After what happened with Andrew Luck and went with Jacoby Brissett in 2019, it didn't work out, and they felt like they needed an upgrade at the position. And I would certainly say that they did. But now they've went down the path of a guy in his late 30s who, to me, in Philip Rivers, showed some elements of potentially being washed in 2019 with the Chargers. Now, look, I still think that he's an upgrade over Brissett, yes. But how much of an upgrade is he going to really, truly be? Like, you look at this deal in combination with the Colts trading away a first-round pick to bring in stud defensive lineman DeForest Buckner via trade from the 49ers. You've basically taken yourself out of the quarterback market. Now, maybe they felt like the top 4 quarterbacks in the draft wouldn't be there at 13. That could be. But they went in with Buckner. Now it feels like they've really gone all in with Philip Rivers. And it's interesting to say the least. I guess one thing if the Buccaneers do it with a quarterback that's won 6 Super Bowls. Philip Rivers has never even been to a Super Bowl, let alone won one. And you're now saying in 2020 that you think this is the guy that's going to take you over the top? It's an interesting thought process here, to say the least. Now, I know there's a familiarity there with him. He's worked with Frank Reich in the past. But if I remember correctly, he didn't exactly have great years during the time that Frank Reich was on that coaching staff with the Chargers. Could be mistaken, but I don't believe I am. So it's weird to think about him playing in another team's uniform. Now, from the Colts standpoint, certainly they feel like the AFC South is wide open. You know, the Texans, who knows what the hell Bob is doing with that team, and we still got months to go to see how much more he could trade away for very little. The Jaguars are a mess. You look at the Titans, and even with them bringing in back Tannehill and Derrick Henry, like, how good do you really think they're going to be? The point is they probably feel like they have an opportunity to win the division in 2020. And I certainly don't disagree with that assertion. But even with that still, I just look at this deal, and you've now given Philip Rivers $25 million to be the guy in 2020 with no guarantee that he's going to give you vintage Philip Rivers type of performance. All the while, you know, you got to think about it from the standpoint of the Chargers knew him, they were familiar with him, and they decided they wanted to move on, and he had been the dude there for a decade and a half, damn near. That should be a little bit concerning. And the Chargers are looking towards the future, whereas the Colts are putting themselves in the position where they're delaying the inevitable and delaying the future, and it's only kicking the can further down the road. And sometimes the longer you wait, the worse off it can be. So you wonder why they're waiting? And the answer is I don't know. Maybe they think they are closer than I might believe and others might believe. I don't really know for sure. But if I talked about for years how Eli Manning was washed up with the New York Giants and yet they still allowed him to start, like based off what I saw in 2019 with Phillip Rivers and the Colts, he looked washed too. Now, granted, he's coming to a situation in Indy where the offensive line is vastly superior. And that, in and of itself, is probably going to help him have a better year in 2020 than he did in 2019. But he also doesn't quite have the same weapons in the passing game that you had with the Chargers. So it's kind of a give one, take one type of situation here. And there's a part of me that wonders if this move was made with the mindset of we need to upgrade over Brissett, but we're not really ready to find that long-term answer because we are keeping the door cracked open for a potential possible return from one Andrew Luck. And look, I don't know if Luck ever wants to play football again, if he ever will play football again. Maybe their thought is give him 2 or 3 years away from the game and he'll want to come back. But there's an element to me that says you keep taking all these patchwork, short-term fix moves at the quarterback position, trying to get by to wait for him to make that decision, and then he never makes that decision to come back. Then you're left standing there with your hat in your hand looking like a jackass because you don't know what the hell you're going to do at the most important position in the game. Like the key thing you can have at the quarterback position as much as anything else is the ability of availability from that quarterback and stability that that quarterback provides. And now, again, the Colts are putting themselves into a situation where the stability at the quarterback position is limited. Even if Rivers comes in and has a great year in 2020, how much longer do you think he's really going to play? You know what I mean? So, it's an interesting. I think a lot of us saw this potentially coming. And once the Chargers basically kind of made it known that he wasn't going to be back, you could really see this was coming. And you figured that once the Tom Brady dominoes started to fall and other dominoes started to fall, Rivers would be one of the dominoes to fall, but he was probably always destined for Indy. I don't really know what to make of this move. It's short term, so if it doesn't work, you're right back in the same situation again heading into 2021 trying to address the quarterback position. You're paying him $25 million. So a guy of his name would typically command more, but it's also commensurate with the level of lack of performance that he had in 2019. For this, I got to say the Colts have got to hope that this does not equal a playoff appearance, but a deep, meaningful playoff run. Because if it doesn't, then this was just one gigantic waste of money and one gigantic waste of time. And when you trade a first-round pick for a DeForest Buckner, you go sign a Phillip Rivers in free agency. That to me is a clear indication that you believe that your time is now. And when you look at the Colts, do you really think they are in a position at this moment, as it currently stands as I speak, with still more free agency to go, the draft to go, and everything else, do you really believe that this Colts team is poised to strike and unseat teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC? And the answer to me is that feels a bit ambitious. And if that's the case, while this might get you some notoriety, this might get you some attention, makes you a little more interesting, at the end of the day, was it really worth it?